Welcome to your community of fee-for-service financial advisors who are successfully building profitable firms that serve the next generation of clients. You'll learn from innovative advisors whose unique stories will inspire you to dream big and take action on your goals. Are you ready to live your great life and help clients live theirs? Then you're in the right place.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and I'm excited to welcome XYPN member Sharon Weaver, founder of Mission Financial Planning, on the show today. Sharon was in financial services before starting her own firm, but had never actually done a financial plan until she launched. She got some early dentist clients from a center of influence referral, which led her to go all in on working with dentists. She's been growing her network of dentistry practice consultants, bankers, and insurance folks who work with dentists, and has also networked with investment managers who refer clients to her because she is advice only, meaning she doesn't manage investments. She's been growing her firm and has started hiring. We talked about the decision to do so and what she's looking for in a second lead planner. So if you're looking for a role as a lead advisor and want to work with dentists, Mission Financial Planning may be the perfect fit. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with Sharon. Thanks for being a listener of XYPN Radio. We want to hear from you about what you want to hear from us. What types of guests do you want to learn from next? What topics or pain points are you craving insights on? Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/radio survey to fill out a short survey telling us what and who you want to hear from on XYPN Radio. That's xyplanningnetwork.com/radio survey. Hey, Sharon, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
Thanks for having me, Alan.
I am super excited to be able to talk with you because you are you're an experienced advisor. You've been running your firm for over a decade now with a super specific niche, which those are two things I don't get to say very often. So often the niche firms tend to be fairly new because it's sort of this new concept, but you were very early. Maybe you invented the niche concept. You're very early to that game, which is awesome, and are showing how to build a really successful firm within a niche. So if you don't mind, could you give listeners just a quick overview, sort of where your firm's located, number of clients, and then and that niche that I'm referencing, and then we'll dig in from there.
Sounds good. I'm in the suburbs of Kansas City, Mission, Kansas. And I have about 88 subscription or annual type clients. And my niche is dentists. And I've been working with them for this whole time, really, extra doubled down on the niche probably 5 years ago. And, as I looked at numbers in preparation for the podcast, I think that's when things really hit a critical mass and started making a difference for me. So it's a niche that I have really enjoyed, and that's been real fun for me to work with.
That's awesome. As you and I were talking about in the pre-show, we had Reese Harper on just a few episodes ago, who also specializes in dentists. So, there are niches where you can have a lot of advisors in that same niche because there are a lot of dentists who have needs. So, just to take a step back, can you talk to me a little bit about your career history? What brought you into financial planning?
Well, I started, forever ago. I've been a CFP for over 25 years. And started, kind of back before there was advice only, fee only. So, very retail, New York Stock Exchange registered firm here in Kansas City, and, which made me really appreciate the fee only world when I got to it. I was working for a money manager who was bringing some no-load funds to market. And that's what really introduced me to NAPFA and the fee only world. It was kind of early in advisors and no-load funds. That whole thing was coming together. And I just loved that whole group, the NAPFA, the Garretts, back in the day, and had always wanted to have my own firm. And so those things came together. And about 11 years ago, I started my own firm. I had some referrals, really great referring angel that sent me some dentists, and then the dentists refer dentists. And then the more you get into a niche, it just seems to blossom. So that's how it happened.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what was it about starting a firm? Like why start your own firm versus joining, an existing firm or one of the many other career paths you can take in this business?
Right. Well, I just recently did a graduate certificate in financial therapy, and you have to look at your own money scripts and kind of that family tree of money. And it was shocking how many generations of business owners I come from. And so I think it was just in my blood. My parents own their own business, grandparents own their own business. And so I just think it was kind of what you normally do. It seems perfectly normal to me. So
there's nothing normal about entrepreneurship. Let me tell you.
And that's what I figured out. But at the time, that just seemed like that was, of course, the path. So.
Yeah, I was in a same boat where my dad had taken stab at entrepreneurship a couple of times with businesses. My mom, I didn't consider her an entrepreneur. It wasn't until I was older that I realized that she was, because she had actually started a nonprofit school for homeschool students.
Sure.
A very unique thing, but being homeschooled, it was sort of this accreditation program with but anyway, because it was nonprofit, in my head, it wasn't entrepreneurship, but I have since learned that it's the same thing with just more complexity, probably from a nonprofit status. But you probably take for granted what you learn growing up in a household of entrepreneurs or being around entrepreneurs, and just how people think about money, how they approach money, how they approach risk. That probably rubs off on us in a way that we don't fully appreciate, because in the end, it's like asking a fish what they think about the water. In the end, they don't know. That's all they've ever known. So, but for those who did not grow up that way, it's probably an advantage that we had.
I think so. I mean, dinner table talk was always about business, and you see that you work hard. You don't get to come home at 3:00 like all the Boeing dads did. And so then, working, as an entrepreneur does seem natural. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in your story, did you work as a financial planner before launching your own firm, or this was sort of your gateway into planning?
It was, the financial consultant in a bank lobby was as close as I got. So no, it was from absorbing all the planners that I was working with, because I was kind of like a wholesaler, more on the service side than sales, but, seeing how they ran their businesses and did what they did. But no, I just got my feet wet here.
I'm amazed at how successful many advisors are, having never done a financial plan before they started their own business. I did not have that level of risk tolerance. So talk to me about that decision. I mean, that, you were in the business enough to know there was a lot you didn't know, but you clearly had the confidence to figure it out. But did you evaluate the idea of going to work somewhere for a couple of years before launching a firm, or was this just sort of the only option you considered?
It's just a couple of things that came together for me. It was a time when I was, I had a lot of mom responsibilities. And so a full-time job probably wasn't, which is kind of hilarious, because how much time goes into having your own firm. But at the time, an 8 to 5 job seemed like it would be difficult with kids. And this, I had the opportunity to receive some referrals. It was a money manager who wanted to be able to refer to a financial planner who didn't manage money. It was probably earlier than I would have done that otherwise, with my kids that age, but it was just an opportunity, and things came together that just made it was time. It was an opportunity, and I took it. I had my CFP. I went back and got my AWMA, mostly as a refresher, just to make sure that I was current with the more, wealth side of things. And, it all worked out great.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you may have said this, how old were your kids when you started your firm?
11 and 13, probably.
Okay. So just about the time you're getting really busy with,
right. With those middle school years. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Mine are a little ways away from that. My oldest is 7, about to be 8, but I am all of a sudden busier in the afternoons. I always said I would not be the dad that's always on the go, and now I'm the dad that's always on the go. So,
right.
So yeah, I mean, starting a firm with young kids, or I guess middle school kids, we won't say too young. Did you feel like that was the right time? Could you have started the firm when they were younger, or did you feel like did sort of the stars align from with kids? Just because, I mean, in the end, as parents, our lives are dictated by our children's schedule and their needs.
Yeah. And I think the roles that I had along the way were flexible enough and had the ability to work remotely. I was already used to that kind of schedule and juggling, and, you might take a couple hours for them during the day, but then you would either wake up early or stay up late to make sure things got done. So, I was already kind of used to juggling a schedule around my family. So it didn't, it wasn't a huge leap to just make it for myself instead of for somebody else.
Okay, that makes sense. So you decide to start your own firm. We're sitting here 11, 12 years ago. What did you think, like what type of client did you think you would work with? Did you have in mind a niche or type of client, or was it really sort of anyone who could fog the mirrors going to get the call back and figure it out as you go?
No, I had a sense that it was dentists, primarily because these first couple of referrals and wanting to build off of that. And it really is a mom and pop business. Often the spouse is frequently involved in the practice, earning at a professional level. And that was something that I was very familiar with, from where I came from. So and I think that for a while I would have taken anybody who steamed a mirror, but I wasn't marketing to anybody who steamed a mirror. So, the focus was still on a niche and dentistry. But again, probably 5 years or so ago was when I really doubled down, and the website became all about dentistry, not, maybe you could be a dentist, but also somebody else. And there is still a page on my website that says that, but it's for people who've been referred to me if you're a good fit. And it's frequently somebody who has a, wealth and lifestyle similar to my dentist clients, or a business model that's similar to a dentistry practice.
Okay. So that makes sense. So how many clients are you serving now?
About 88.
Okay. And what percentage of those do you think are dentists?
Oh, vast majority.
Okay.
80 to 90% probably.
Okay. So you really are. Yeah. You're all in.
Either dentists or they have retired from dentistry.
Okay. That makes sense. So one thing that you mentioned, I want to come back to the niche of dentists because I want to learn sort of what all you're doing there. But one of the things you mentioned was that you are advice only, which is a relatively up and coming term that we use. Sounds a lot like fee only, but advice only being that you do not do any type of investment management or implementation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you don't, I think sometimes advice only, what we hear is flat fee, but I still may manage investments, but you're not managing investments as part of a flat fee. So really planning only. You were early to that. I would say that is something that this sort of that concept is now starting to gain more steam. So how did you make that decision early on, especially because you're working with clients that had investments to manage? A 1% AUM model would have been great from a business perspective.
Very profitable. I really should have done that. Probably a couple of things. I love the planning part. I mean, I love that puzzle and, figuring all that out and all the moving parts. And that really is my passion. And that was my background. And I would much prefer to do that than to manage money. Having the advice only format then allows, I get referrals from money managers and people who do manage money, and that's what they do 100%, and they're great at it. And so it can be this nice synergy of I do what they don't want to do and they do what I don't want to do. And that works out really well.
Yeah. And there's no risk that they're sending. It's one thing if you do planning, but then if they send them to you, those clients to you, and you also do investment management over time, there's concern that, you're going to erode that relationship. So, it makes a lot of sense. It's like I said, you were very early to that. We're just now starting to see more advisors going that direction, which a lot of, and I don't mean to speak for every advice only advisor. I'm just generically speaking, I have found that the advice only model works really well for the validator client model. Michael talks about you have delegators, validators, and DIYers, and that they are looking for ongoing support. They're looking for validation of their plan, but they're not looking to delegate and hand things off. That's not your profile though, because they're still hiring an outside money manager, which means they still sort of fit in that traditional planning situation or a typical planning client profile, which would be the delegators. They're just delegating to two different entities instead of one.
Yes. And I do have some DIYers also. Yeah.
Do the DIYers hire you on an ongoing basis?
Yes.
So interesting. I've heard a couple of folks mention this recently, and I just always think of the DIYers as they're only going to pay you hourly, if at all, but they'll pay you for a couple of hours and they're gone because they know how to do it themselves. So how does that conversation go for a client that truly like, I'm going to do this all myself? I don't, I can use Google too. I'm just here because, you do this a lot.
Right.
How do you get them to pay an ongoing fee?
Well, I think we absolutely provide ongoing services. I mean, the subjects that we touch on, I mean, their investments are just a small percentage of what we're talking about, because we're talking about their dental practice and the retirement plan and insurance and estate planning and education funding, all the pieces and parts, cash flow, or really looking at cash flow. And, it's a deep and comprehensive approach with an ongoing, every quarter we're touching on something that it was either a gap that we discovered. We have annual workshopping meetings and then the quarterly consult that, we're then doing a deep dive on something that was either a gap or we needed more work on it or something's come up in the meantime. And, particularly with both business and personal, there's just a lot to talk about other than what your Vanguard fund is doing. So there's a lot of conversation that happens beyond just the investments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that model that you just talked about. So you said you have an annual sort of workshop meeting, and then you have subsequent quarterly meetings. I'm not sure that I've heard many advisors that differentiate in that way. So can you talk to me about the service model and how you're delivering that?
So we have an initial and then annual meeting that used to be people would fly in for pre-COVID.
Okay.
Because we have people in 33 states, I think, at this point. So they would fly in, spend most of the day, and we just really workshop, where are you? What are you doing? Talk about personal and practice, bring lunch into the office. It was, very touchy-feely.
It's a pretty intense meeting. It's very
intense.
So doing 88 of those in a year, that sounds like a full-time job.
That's a lot. Then some of those were virtual, but the vast majority were in person. And then with COVID, they all became virtual. And I think that we've come to a point now that I don't know how many people will come back. I mean, virtual is working, but it's still a 2 to 3 hour Zoom where we're, really looking at everything. We get all the information in advance, of course, but then the workshopping is just the conversation back and forth about what do you want? What are you doing? What's your time horizon on this? Here's how it looks. Let's look at some other what ifs, just running all of that. And in that conversation, you identify the to-dos for me and them. And then those are the things that we're going to take care of on the quarterly 1 hour, 45-minute Zooms throughout the year.
Okay. Super cool. That, like I said, that is not a common structure that I hear very often. So that's really interesting to hear how you're doing that. Do you do all of those sort of intense meetings? Is that always Q1, or do you have those spread throughout the year?
They're spread throughout the year because it's the first meeting is whenever the client came on board. And because dentists are often off on Fridays, initially they were like, well, when's our next Friday that's available? With Zoom, that's opened up the schedule so that we can get, other days worked in, but it's pretty evenly spread throughout the year.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
So, and then in those quarterly meetings, do those have a sort of typical agenda? Are they like, is it really just based on whatever you discovered in the last round of meetings, whatnot?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I have a map, it's kind of a probably 18-month to 2-year map of things that I want to make sure we're covering on a quarterly basis. So probably 3 layers. that, that map that we've all talked about before, then annually, there are just things that come up. Before year end, we want to make sure we look at whether you need to do a Roth conversion if you're, between when you sold the practice and 72, or did you get all your salary deferrals in if you're working and funding a 401k, just all those year end conversations, and different quarters have different things that are just because it's that time of year, we have that conversation. But then, so those things are fairly consistent client to client, but then there's the customized, we identified in the annual meeting that we really need to look at your estate documents again. This is when we're going to talk about, the estate exclusion and what we're doing from there. So.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I love that. It sounds like pretty systematized, but also has enough flexibility based on where clients at and sort of their situation.
The scheduling and structure is very systemized, but then the conversations are pretty personal.
So you said 33 states, but I want to step back to where these referrals are coming from, which will probably answer the question around states. So you're getting a lot of, it sounds like, referrals from investment managers. How did you build these relationships with investment managers? I mean, where do they hang out for you to go find them to be able to be able to network with them that they'll send you clients?
Well, one I worked for before. So,
okay.
So I know their ins and outs and, they know me well enough to feel comfortable referring to me. And others I have found along the way that, other clients we're working with and like their approach. I also get referrals from dental specific CPAs, dental practice brokers, dental consultants. So then by being involved in the dental world, then your name gets out there a little bit and you get some referrals from other places too.
Where do the dentists, where all these dental consultants and such hang out? Are there's associations?
There is.
Okay. Are you going to dental conferences?
Not so much the conferences. Pre-COVID, I was had a little focus on wanting to do some speaking at those, and that that COVID derailed that. And at this point, I'm not sure that's not on my top priority list right now.
Right.
But I am involved with the Speaking and Consulting Network, which is all dental consultants and speakers. And so those are all people who are involved with dentists and involved in the dental practices. And that has been a really good resource of just, both them referring to me, but people to refer to, because as I talk to dentists, then, I need help figuring out my scheduling system or, billing system. And so then I have resources to refer out to.
Okay. No, it makes a lot of sense to, again, as you're working specifically with these dentists, to be able to have that network of resources, because we take for granted that like most of your dentists don't know who the dental consultants are. They don't know. Not
as many as, when you go to that organization and see a room full of 150 of them. So, yeah.
So how did you begin building those relationships? Because you said like you started off with one or two dentists from a referral, but then from there, like, were most of those coming from the money man where you had worked before and then just built out the dental relationships? Because I mean, those that's not like show up at a conference, talk to somebody over beer and like they'll send you clients. Like you got to really build that relationship.
It's taken 11 years to, get to that point. But I think the best way to have someone trust you as a referral is to refer to them. And so, extending the first olive branch, so to speak, of, there's a dental CPA that I refer to, and, I just loved the quality of his work, his business model, the way that he was dealing with a client that we had in common. And so to start referring to him, and then he became more familiar with the kind of clients that I'm working with and, who was a good fit for me, which was basically who's a good fit for him. And so that's become synergistic. And, it's been that way with a couple of other types of professionals too. So, I think the first thing is you can't just expect things. You also have to share.
Yeah, absolutely. It is fair that it's easy to be like, well, my services are so valuable that you have no choice but to refer to me. But that's really not how that works.
Yeah.
It really does take building trust and time. That is so cool. I mean, and to your point, like this is why I love a good niche. It's just because like, advisors will ask me, well, do you think I should be doing Instagram marketing, or should I be speaking at conferences, or should I pay to be an exhibitor at a conference? I'm like, I don't know, what's your niche market? Because theoretically at these dental conferences, you could be an exhibitor, you could be a speaker, you could start a podcast for dentists. I mean, there's so many things you could do, but it's really clear on where your folks are looking for information. And it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of your marketing energy has been put into center of influence marketing in order to build these relationships. You're getting referrals. Are you doing any type of content marketing for these?
That's probably my weak spot, and where I'd like to focus on that. And then I do think the conferences, if you could get in front of a group full of dentists, it makes sense that they, surely some small percentage would want to work with you. I would love to do that. But, a client referred new client is the very best because they already know the kind of business that you do. They're already a right fit before you even talk to them, because the client wouldn't refer them otherwise.
Right. So. No, that makes sense. So you said you you sort of went all in on the dentist marketplace maybe 5 years ago. What drove that decision?
I think that, so a confidence level, getting to that point in my business where if, of being able to really focus in, and probably I would have gotten there sooner if I'd already been niche-y. But, I think we talked a lot about dentists, but the website didn't go all in on dentists, and the content that we had didn't go all in on dentists until that point. And I think that, just having the confidence level with the niche, what we do to serve them, and the confidence level that there's plenty of business to be had there. And in fact, better business by focusing in.
Mm-hmm. And then when you made that transition, you probably had clients that weren't dentists. Did you communicate this to your current clients, or just sort of make the website shift and just start?
It was a website shift, and everybody knew that was my, that really was my niche, and that the bulk of my clients were dentists. And I didn't fire anybody for not being a dentist. And I still have clients that aren't dentists, but they fit into that, this kind of a same type, as I said, same kind of business model or type of client. Kind of the avatar is very similar, and they would have been referred into me by a client, not just calling off the website.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of advisors are afraid that, well, if I only work with dentists on my website, and then one of my current clients goes to that website, what are they going to think? What are they going to see? And it's a valid fear, because it's like, well, this is interesting. This isn't necessarily what I thought when we started working together, but it sounds like that was not a painful transition for you. It was just sort of.
No, because we've always talked about being a dentist specific firm. And, there's a page on the website that says, if you're referred in, and, let's just talk and see if we're a good fit. And if they're not, we'll certainly help them find somebody. So.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's great. Again, you've really gone all in on the niche, which is so cool to talk about. Going back a little bit, I guess one step back, one thing I did not ask you is about your fee structure. So we mentioned that you're advice only, which means don't manage investments, but there's a lot of flexibility inside of that when it comes to fees. So how have you found what works for you from a pricing standpoint with these dentist clients?
So for a practice owner, our annual fee is $5,800 divided into monthly payments. So that's, $483 a month. If they're not a practice owner, so maybe an associate, or maybe somebody who was referred in, or if they're retired, it's $4,800 a year or $400 a month.
And are those really the two options, I guess? Either you own a practice or you don't.
Yeah. And we do some hourly work, some project work, but, the more annual clients we have, the less of that we do.
Yeah. It's always nice to have those projects in some of the hourly work early days when you're just getting started.
Yes.
And that $200, I remember getting a check for like $800, and it was the difference between paying my bill. Well, it was my rent that month on my office space. And it is amazing. It was like, oh, thank goodness I took this work on, because it's easy to say like, oh, I'm not going to take that. I'm just going to take ideal clients in my net, that pay ongoing fees. Like, sometimes you just got to generate cash. However,
that's right.
Now, hopefully, have you found advisors to refer some of that business to for the dentists that don't fit your niche?
If they're a dentist, they probably fit my niche.
That's fair.
But yes, yeah. And, some XYPN, some others, but yeah, we'll refer out if we need to.
So have you found, I guess, when you were pricing, $5,800, $4,800, like, how did you come up with that number? Why does that number make sense for your clients, and for you to be able to run a profitable business?
I looked at it from a, hours and capacity standpoint. What's it take to serve a client on an average year? Sometimes it's going to be a lot more hours, if they're in they're selling their practice that year, or they're transitioning in one way or another. Some years may be less, but that seemed like a good number of hours and hourly rate. Hourly rate's $270. So kind of a discount on the hourly rate for the number of hours that it takes to serve an annual client. If
I could ask, how many hours is that? Like, what's your guess on sort of that first year, then ongoing for, I should say guess, you've clearly figured it out. Like, what works there? Probably
17 to 25 or 30, depending on the client. Particularly by the time you have one of the big consultative meetings, the prep for that, the follow-up reporting, the prep, follow-up, and quarterly calls, and then inevitably whatever's happening in between times, we're usually talking between quarters too. So
okay, all right. So dentists. And listeners have heard me say this a couple of times recently on podcasts, because I've been talking to folks with just these really cool niches. Many times the niche gets sort of held out as just a marketing ploy. Like, oh, well, you and I know the same stuff, but you say you work with dentists and I say I work with pharmacists, and therefore you get dentists and I get pharmacists. But are you really better at serving dentists than I am? How would you answer that accusation that your niche is nothing more than marketing?
I think that we are better at serving dentists from the standpoint of just being able to talk the language. And I understand how a practice operates and the kinds of expenses that they'll see, how much they should be paying for payroll, what overhead should be, when they're selling a practice, what has to happen before the closing of that, and whether or not it makes sense to negotiate or not, and about what's the right price, and what banks will lend to dentists. And so it's not so much what happens inside e-money that's that much different. It's just the language and other knowledge points that I can bring to the table.
That's a really good delineation that just in your specific niche, it's not so much the planning for the individual that's what's different. It's really the planning for the business that's really unique. And like, in a way, it's the fact that you are a dentist, a dental firm consultant, and have all those connections. And that's really a value add that you bring that, like, I wouldn't even know where to start when it comes to trying to hire a dental consultant. I would just Google it and find 3 names, and I would have no idea who they were.
And the difference would be somebody who works with, like a lot of employee stock options. There's going to be some really different tax and planning and different whole modules in the software that need to be learned. So I think we stand apart that way. It's not so much the planning piece, but just the bigger picture of what's happening. That being said, there is a commonality of lifestyle, wealth or student loans, or there are certain things that are common from a planning standpoint because of being in dentistry.
Right. No, that it makes a lot of sense. And I think that there is something to be said for speaking the language, and just having metaphors that actually work for that client base.
Right.
And those are little nuanced things, but like, if you're the master generalist, you're always trying to come up with something that relates to that client. Like, you can probably come up with a metaphor for any client situation or anything you're trying to explain to them, and how it ties into dentistry, that again speaks their language and helps them understand that you really know who they are, that you understand their lifestyle and their business and all of that. So,
well, and to bring stories from other dentists, like, here's what a guy on the East Coast is doing, and I would never tell the story of if I had, two dentists in the same city, for instance. But if you can bring a marketing idea or a hiring idea or an employee bonus structure idea, those are things that I can gather from all over the country and provide that somebody else isn't going to hear if they are not working with other dentists.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. So you mentioned that you have clients in 33 states. And again, like, you were early to the remote game here. Like, this is well pre-COVID that, you're working with these clients all over. Now, granted, you did say they're flying in once a year, which I don't think I've ever heard that before as well. So that's really unique. That you were able to get the clients to come out. I understand that they're never coming out again. Right. Any particular challenges that you faced just from a service standpoint, marketing standpoint, compliance, when it comes to having clients in that many different states?
No, we're always, very aware when we bring on a new client to make sure we're either still under the de minimis or, just checking from a compliance standpoint. But no, it hasn't been a problem. I mean, we have worked remotely for a long time. We used Join Me for screen sharing, and, the technology has evolved and we've evolved with it.
Yeah, it's so funny because, I have a presentation about working with next gen clients. And one of the things that we talk about is the ability to work remotely. Why you should have a niche is because, in the end, clients don't necessarily want who lives closest to them. They want the expert, and they're willing to hire someone remotely or travel or whatnot to find the expert. And like, you are personifying that. Maybe the presentation was basically about you in that, that these clients they're looking for someone who really understands their situation, who empathizes with them, who's not going to be judgmental of how they operate. And I'm more familiar on the physician side. I know nothing about dentistry practices, but I just remember just the complexity of the businesses where there was like the holding company for the building and the equipment, and then the holding company that had the employees, and they were their own employee to like try to maximize retirement benefits. Like, just people who understand that, who aren't like, what are you doing? Just like, yep, seen it this way 74 times before, or 87 times before.
Right.
Is so powerful and meaningful for the clients, and really gives you the opportunity to grow a very successful firm.
Yeah, it's been really rewarding.
So when we first started, you mentioned money scripts, which for anyone who knows me, that is a weakness of mine. I love financial therapy. My first boss out of college was Rick Kaler, who was one of sort of the fathers of financial therapy and really bringing together psychology and money. So what made you interested in pursuing the financial therapy certification? I believe you said that's one through Kansas State, I assume.
I did a graduate certificate program through K-State, and I think my next thing is going to probably be the CFT, the Certified Financial Therapist. The people fascinate me, and financial decisions are not always logical. The ones that we make are not always logical. They may look logical and just a bunch of numbers from the outside. But there's so many things that affect that decision other than the number answer. I mean, anybody listening to the podcast knows that. That fascinates me. And to know more about that and to bring more awareness and knowledge to the table. And I think I have a lot of clients that find themselves interested in that. I just think the psychology of money is fascinating.
Yeah, I appreciate that you said everyone listening knows that. Unfortunately, I don't think that's actually the case. I think we were all trained that in the end, it's just numbers and math and logic. And if I present you two options and one option is clearly better, of course you will take that option, which is why 70% of parents don't have a will or something like that.
Right. Right.
If only logic was enough when it comes to money. And I'm also coming to appreciate not just the emotional side, just complexity. This how complex stuff is. I mean, my financial planner struggles to get me to do stuff because I'm like, I don't remember the password of that system. I don't want to log in and download the form. Right. And I had to set up recurring payments recently on a life insurance policy. I had to print a form. I had to find a printer, print a form, find a check, attach the check, and allow it to be recurring. It's just it's complex. And it is
complex. And if you were a money avoidant person, or if there were some things that were triggering, those are a lot of roadblocks to get through to just get something basic set up. And, the more complex our money gets, the more possible roadblocks are there. So I had a client, it's our first meeting, and he told me that he had and I had not said anything about financial therapy. And he just told me, I may kind of get triggered here. Money's really a hard thing for me. So if I just tell you I'm kind of flooded, I need to step away. I thought, what a fantastic awareness. I mean,
it is.
Of 11 years, that's the first person who, on a first meeting told me that this could be an issue, but that he was really wanting to face it and work with it with his financial planning. If only more people were that aware.
Yeah, no kidding. That is huge. I mean, because I would say that the most, I have not gone through the official graduate certification. I did some of the early work, but as it became more formalized. But some of the most powerful results and sort of the benefits of going through some of these financial therapy trainings is the work you have to do on yourself.
Yes.
Because as they like to say in therapy, you can only take a client as far as you've been willing to go yourself. And so, you can't really take a client talking through their manuscripts unless you really understand yours and can own them. Yeah. And so that building that awareness, as advisors, I do think we have I would argue the obligation as we start to do more and more real financial planning. If you're just managing money and just doing investments, fine. But if you're doing real financial planning, having these really hard conversations with clients, helping them understand their goals, their dreams, you need to go there yourself. So whether you do the full certificate program or just take a class or two, or, a workshop at a conference, it's important work that really will help you develop a much deeper and better relationship with your clients.
And just an awareness so you can pick up on something that might be going on and, help them get through the roadblocks that might be keeping them from accomplishing something.
Yeah, what I've always been jealous of with therapists was that they knew how to ask the next question.
Right.
And with my own therapist, I try to listen for them. How does she do this? I say something and she asks me a question about something else, but it ties in. How do you do this? And of course, she's a professional question asker, which is amazing.
Right.
But it really is an incredible skill set. Switching gears a little bit, I'm curious. You've been with the firm now 11 years. You're going deep into this niche. You're clearly having traction. What are you building towards now? Have you made some decisions around, are you going to be solo? Do you want to build a boutique? Do you want to build $1 billion, advice only dentist focused firm? Have you decided sort of what you're building towards at this point?
Yeah, I would like to have a boutique, a dentist specific boutique. I would like to find my next planner, a collaborator, partner, maybe somebody is interested in ownership, because I feel like I have those people on the outside, but to have somebody like that on the inside, for bouncing ideas off one another, I think that just, I think that will really help grow the firm. We have good support system in place. I have great support people. And I think the planner role is next. I just took Arlene's Ready, Aim, Hire workshop. So working on that.
Yeah. So that's referencing Arlene Moss, who's our executive business coach here at XYPN. She just did a hiring workshop, which was very, very popular, which is awesome to hear. Maybe we'll have to have Arlene on to talk about that topic, because
that was great.
Hiring's hard. I mean, and just like and I'll say, like, messing that one up is not good.
It's expensive.
It's expensive. It's painful. It takes a long time to recover, which is why I think a lot of folks are hesitant to do it, or they've messed it up one time, then they don't want to start again. But it sounds like you've been hiring, so you have some support. How many team members are at the firm now?
I have a support specialist who's been with me since 2014. Prior to having kids, she was a CFP and paraplanner. So she brings just a tremendous amount of depth to what she does. She doesn't want to be client facing, but she's a fabulous client support, helps me with, keeping e-money and red tail all current and accurate, and does a fantastic job. I have somebody who was a CPA prior to being a mom's, and now, wants to work for me doing that. So she helps me with a lot of my billing and accounting, and she's available if somebody has just a QuickBooks disaster area, she can step in and take care of that. Just recently hired another person who will be helping with this system of meetings, making sure that engine continues to run smoothly, of preparing for the annual meeting, what are the data requests, making sure everybody's scheduled for quarterlies, and just, keeping that rotating. And then she is also helping me with some research we're looking at a new product with the 321 fiduciary services for new dental practices. So, have good support that way of people who, I've known for a long time, or have had a really good industry experience, and they bring a lot to the table. But the next piece I need is somebody that can help, do what I do, replicate what I do.
It's a tough hire, but I bet you get some emails after this podcast.
That would be fantastic.
Because there are a lot of folks that don't want to run the business; they just want to do planning the right way. And this is like the perfect type situation where you're coming into more an established niche, an established process, like with a mentor who's there to be able to provide that guidance, but be able to offer. I mean, this
right.
This is what I and all my classmates, this is what we dreamed of, was being able to come out of school into a position like that did not find it.
Yeah, I think it would be great. And it's a very collaborative environment. I'd have to be obviously somebody who is advice only. When I've looked in the past, a lot of times people are like, oh, I just love doing the investments, and that's not going to be the right fit. But,
absolutely. Yeah, more and more folks, I just never, and I'm so not investment centric. I'm like, I used to have a buddy that if the market was ever going crazy, he would text me and be like, hey, just so you know, this is happening in the market in case your client asks. Cause I'm totally oblivious. Like, apparently the market has been falling apart the last couple of months. I'm like, I don't know. But that being said, I just don't even know what you talk about with investments. I'm like, how many times can you show the same graph over and over? Like, I want to talk about the meat of financial planning. Like, let's talk about like what's going on in your life, and the good stuff, the bad stuff, the hard stuff. Like, let's cry some. Like, that's real planning. That's
my life. That's my life. Alan.
Yeah. And I think it was Carl Richards, I think, that I heard say this first time. He's like, if I can make you cry in the discovery meeting, you're a client for life. And it's like, that is my goal. And he's gifted at making people cry. So in a good way.
That's great.
So just real quick, because I'm not familiar with it, before we close out, you said the 321 fiduciary. Can you just sort of briefly, what is that?
Well, I've found that a lot of new dental practice owners get to a point in a year or two where they want to add a 401k to their platform, to their service, employee benefits. And for a new dentist like that, for that kind of a plan, what I see is a lot of them ending up with a broker and then a separate TPA, and kind of a convoluted combination of things that is, maybe not the greatest thing that they could have. What we want to provide is some hand-holding services of getting them almost to a DIY kind of 401k. I'm looking at Vestwell, providers like that that for a nominal fee, help them through the decision-making process, the plan design process, get them set up, get their employees set up, but maybe allow them to graduate from all the other associated fees that go with that and have just a nice starter 401k plan. And the 321 fiduciary seems like it's a way to be able to offer that service without a full comprehensive financial plan at that point. But those would certainly be people that would then feed into our financial plan model down the road.
Again, the beauty of a niche is once you get sort of that core group, then you can start offering services and solutions that core group needs from you, and be able to sort of engage them further, which is, it doesn't make any sense to roll that kind of service out if you have 2 business owner clients. That
Right.
only makes sense when you have 88
Right.
ish, and so that again, it's the power of having a niche focus. So, all right. Well, as we are coming to the end of our time together, I'll ask you the final question. And that is, if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
Maybe I would join XYPN earlier. I don't know.
I don't think we were around this. You're fine.
I did hang around the edges for a while before finally pulling the trigger on joining. I think I would hire earlier, having a fantastic support and, partner in the business has been, really great. Try not to do it all by yourself. And, by leveraging your time with somebody else, a support person, can really make a difference. And then I think continuing education, just, learning as much as you can, hopefully specific to the niche that you are wanting to serve. Not only does it increase your knowledge, but it allows you to talk about interesting things, what you're doing, how you're expanding, how you're bettering yourselves. And those are always good client conversations. So
I love it. Well, thanks for sharing that. All right, Sharon, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and share your journey. This was fantastic learning more about your firm and just excited to see the success you've had and will continue to have as you go forward. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Good talking to you.
Thanks for being a listener of XYPN Radio. We want to hear from you about what you want to hear from us. What types of guests do you want to learn from next? What topics or pain points are you craving insights on? Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/radio survey to fill out a short survey telling us what and who you want to hear from on XYPN Radio. That's xyplanningnetwork.com/radio survey. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private Facebook group for fee-for-service advisors. It's the community you've been looking for that's there to provide support no matter where you are in your journey. Best of all, it's free. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP.
Thanks for listening to XYPN Radio. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to leave a review that will help grow the movement of fee-for-service advisors, serving next-gen clients and building the firms of their dreams. That's all for today's episode. Until next time.